Senator Boozman, as well as members of the committee. Good morning. I bring you greetings from Governor Hutchinson of Arkansas, and I appreciated the opportunity to respond to your call this morning. We in Arkansas are seeking to drive regulatory policy that balance effective environmental results, assure long-term resource management, affordable energy, and economic growth goals. We want a state that can seek to attract newest generation of professionals searching out healthy living lifestyles and Arkansas's world-class recreational opportunities. Arkansas has invested heavily in assuring that we are wise stewards of the abundant and clean air, healthy breathing air, the amazing vistas with which we have been blessed. We do not take our status as the natural state lightly. In fact, we strive to fairly and consistently serve the corresponding and complementary roles of environmental stewardship and economic development. Likewise, for decades, we have successfully worked with EPA under a symbiotic governing model that is the topic of today's hearing. This notion is born of something uniquely American, our system of federalism, whereby the nations and states function together as co-sovereigns. Both the EPA and states had a relatively balanced seat at the table. And as we are known to do in the South, we would all sit around the table and have a good old-fashioned meal. There would be lively debate, ample servings, and we would cooperate and prepare a meal together. However, this once treasured family-style dining with our federal partners has become a thing of the past. Now we have an increasingly diminished role in the menu selection and meal preparation. We are often forced to eat what is served. The cooperative federalism model that has defined Arkansas's relationship with EPA beginning in the 1970s has morphed into something that is better described today as coercive federalism. We have seen a decrease in time and tolerance for state implementation plans and a dramatic increase in EPA takeovers or federal implementation plans. Historically, these FIPs were used as weapons of last resort for our EPA partner, its nuclear option, for states that were unfaithful to the partnership or denied marriage outright. Now, FIPs are often used as an everyday tool, often of dubious origin, in the EPA's vast arsenal. In the past 7 years, states have been forced to digest more of these federal takeovers, known as FIPs, than were ever served in the prior 3 federal administrations combined 10 times over. States will not waste the time to draft their own proposals if they expect the federal government to do what it wants to in the end. State sovereignty is diminished, and the opportunity for local innovation is destroyed. Cooperation should be fostered, not discouraged. We call on you, our Congress, to help remedy this broken marriage through amendment or ancillary legislation. States are placed in the unfair position, having purchased a very expensive seat at the table, but then finding out meals are served exclusively from the EPA table. We are to be served a fixed menu without a fixed price. States' willingness to split the check and occasionally buy dessert was mitigated by a healthy respect and accompanying deference we received. Now we ask your assistance in resetting that needle to its point of origin. For air pollution, we seek air pollution prevention and control is the primary responsibility of the states and local governments. In our estimation, Congress should ring the dinner bell, calling for the meal to be served. States should host that occasion, and EPA should be a frequent and faithful guest at each state's table. However, where we are now, we can best describe it as a progressive dinner party gone bad. States have recognized an unprecedented level of federal actions. To borrow a saying in the South, we have more on our plate than we can say grace over. The sheer number of mandates and deadlines, further complicated by the complexity of the rules, leaves us in a position where being served appetizer, soup, salad, main course, and dessert all at the same time. And if we do not clean our crumbs, we are banished from the table. States rarely have sufficient notice and implementation of the rules to establish meaningful outcomes before moving to the next one. And we are left unable to get a taste of one course before the next one arrives. The EPA is afforded the luxury of being the ultimate picky eater while they select what they prefer on the menu, while we states are struggling to digest the meals plus leftovers. The reality is that states are often now more pawn than partner is no more were evidenced in the EPA's transformation from a two-sentence legislative passage to the Clean Power Princess and extraordinary costs. Arkansas is seeking ways to work with how we can work with EPA on consolidating efforts and superseding FIPS and SIPs without facing legal conflicts. In addition to the Clean Water Act, the state developed robust eco-region natural condition water criteria in Arkansas have now become unrealistic and often unachievable minimum water protection standards. In this case, EPA has executed an ultimate bait and switch. Serving up cooperative federalism in a coercive manner is distasteful, but the executive branch to ignore the chairs at our metaphorical table that are stabilized by 3 legs and not just one makes for a difficult and messy meal. We do want a seat at this table. We should not be fed the regulation of the day. In fact, the great majority of the FIPS we have result from reinterpretation of the good neighbor provisions. In conclusion, not only has the uniquely American cooperative federalism model fallen, but the state role is now less partner and more pawn. We do see sue and settle appearing on the menu. We are left to wonder if special interest groups currently occupy our seat at the table that once was reserved for us. With states are disfranchised, so is the truth of our federal democracy and the people we represent. Thank you.
Implementation plans under the administration. As depicted in this chart, the Obama EPA has taken over state programs 54 times, more than the 3 previous administrations combined, times 10. Director Keogh, are you concerned about this trend? Isn't it true that state plans are integral to the Clean Air Act cooperative federalism structure, and federal plans are intended only as a last resort?
Thank you, Senator. We are concerned about this trend, and we understand as a state that federal plans may be necessary sometimes in circumstances where states do not act or choose not to act. But the frequency and process of these FIPS have become so alarming that mainly because they take a federal solution that may be developed in a very short period of time with limited information and replace a very thoughtful and extensive process at a state level where we've dealt with what could be a reasonable solution. We vet it through transparent processes and also search out whether we have unintended consequences. So that is our biggest concern, is that we replace our well thought out judgment with somebody else's solution that may not have seen that same thoughtful process.
Very good. As you know, under the Regional Haze Program, states develop implementation plans. EPA has limited authority to reject a state plan and issue a federal plan instead. Still yet in Arkansas, EPA rejected our state plan and proposed an extremely expensive federal takeover. Director Keogh, is it true our state plan was on track to achieve natural visibility conditions?
Yes, sir.
In its proposed federal regional haze plan for Arkansas, did EPA go beyond its limited procedural role prescribed by the Clean Air Act?
In Arkansas, we do believe so. And in fact, when I asked EPA, when they offered up the federal proposal, why they expanded the scope of the regional haze plan to include sources that were not legally authorized under the rule, EPA answered, because we can.
How will the requirements of the federal regional haze plan interact with possible actions under the Clean Power Plan? Are those timelines intertwined in a complicated way?
They are for Arkansas, at least. Our state air experts that evaluated both rules and have been working diligently to assess impacts and solutions looked at models. And I think it's important to show that the model under the regional haze plan, where they take into account cost effectiveness, assumes the source could install multi-million-dollar control equipment and do it cost effectively. However, when you look at the models and the timelines of the Clean Power Plan, that same source no longer operates just a few years later after those controls are installed. And that would be a very extremely costly mistake for Arkansans to pay for, to install multi-million-dollar controls only to have the source shut down to comply with the subsequent rule compliance date.
Thank you. Mr. Ali mentioned about the unfunded mandates. I think that's something that I think we can all agree on is a real problem. Some of these things we're having trouble on agreement, but the unfunded mandates really is a problem.